And joining me are poet and academic Tom Pollan, novelist Julie Morrison, and writer and critic John Harris. The novelist Ian McEwan, who this week made the Booker shortlist, says he thinks of his books like architecture. And in the new film of his novel Atonement, which opened the Venice Film Festival, screenwriter Christopher Hampton and director Joe Wright have created three distinctive parts of this intricate story, which moves from a grand English country house to Dunkirk to wartime London. At the heart of it all is a budding romance between Cecilia Tallis, played by Keira Knightley, and the housekeeper's son Robbie Turner, James McAvoy, which is devastated by the actions of Cecilia's little sister Bryony, who sees a shadowy figure molesting her cousin Lola in the garden.
It's all right, dear. You're all right now. Is Robbie back yet? I haven't seen him.
I know who it was.
You saw him then?
Yes, I saw him.
Just as you see me?
I know it was him.
You know it was him? Or you saw him?
Yes, I did. I saw him.
With your own eyes?
Yes, I saw him. I saw him with my own eyes.
Well done, darling.
Saoirse Ronan there, the first of three Bryonies in the film. Julie, Christopher Hampton and Joe Wright have brought their very particular vision to what essentially is a very interior story by Ian McEwan. It's a hard thing to do.
Yes, it's funny because I think in a way I can't imagine anyone making a more intelligent, sensitive, enjoyable, actually it's a very enjoyable film, film of the book. It's at times it sort of smells like the novel to me. The country house is exactly as it was supposed to be. But having said that, there's something wrong with it, and flaws that I did not notice in the book, which probably aren't flaws in the book because McEwan's writing carries you through, I began to notice in the film. And
like what?
Well, particularly the war, for instance. I mean, the first section is perfection for me. It then moves into this war section, which in the book was so engaging and so needed to be there. In the film, I sort of feel why is it there? None of the characters actually are changed by it in a way that alters the outcome of the novel. And I think that's a problem. It's not a problem for me with the book, even though it's there. Other things, viewpoint, whose story is this? I'm not sure. You know, I could go on, but I mean, I'm baffled actually, because I did like the film.
Tom, on the question of whose viewpoint it is, I mean, we have three Bryonies.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And just very distinctive performances, but actually unknowing as to whether or not, as Julie says, is the story from her perspective or James McAvoy. Does it matter?
Well, I think it's from her perspective. I mean, as in the novel, it's a very subtle account of the dangers of the imagination and the fact that the imagination and original sin are intimately connected. So Bryony saying that James McAvoy carried out the attack is the original sin. And then she tries to compensate for that in her writing life later on. And I think that is the driving point of the film. I think it is a marvellous film. I think it's a classic film. I mean, it's brilliantly scripted and directed and acted. It's quite extraordinary. I think the war scenes work very well. The Dunkirk scene is very powerful.
It is powerful, but what's it for?
Well, because it's part of the sort of the lead up to the Second World War, and then James McAvoy, you know, fighting and dying at Dunkirk.
Yeah,
Well, on that point of the Dunkirk scene, we can see some of that now. It in itself is a bravura scene in the sense that it's a Steadicam scene over 5 minutes, rehearsed all day and then 3 takes. Did it need to be as in a sense elegiac as this?
It's a strange question. That's what it needed to be. I'm glad it was. I mean, that's really the point at which the talent of Joe Wright, who wasn't even the first choice to direct this film, just becomes glaringly evident. It does in the first sequence, to be honest, but I thought as a portrait of the blunt end of war, how it fits into the plot, which Julie's outlined as a criticism to me, was academic. It was so sense-filling and evocative, and the idea that this one man's when he's fading from life, I mean, this man is about to die in the midst of all this, was so incredibly powerful. I just thought, I'm so glad I'm sitting in the cinema watching this film. That applied to the first part in the country pile as well, but definitely in terms of of forcing you just to salute the talent of the director. The war sequence is the one.
Well, let's look a bit now to the beginning of the film, and in a sense the sort of opening of kind of sexual realisation between Cecilia Tallis, played by Keira Knightley, and Robbie, played by James McAvoy.
Careful!
Now, Julie, this is being talked about. Immediately it's talked about in terms of it was a triumph for Keira Knightley. Well, we'll come on to Keira Knightley in a minute, but I really want to talk about James McAvoy, because it was always, would James McAvoy stand up in this performance against Keira Knightley's presence? Well, I think he absolutely takes it away.
Yes, he does. I mean, despite my criticism, he is exceptional, and he is. He's I don't know what it's about him, because he is playing a character who actually, on the face of it, is very hard to play. There are no flaws in Robbie. He just is the boy you would like to have jumped out of the fountain for at that age. And he appeals to on every level. But no, it's a very complex performance, and he does change. I mean, having said all what I said about the war, he does change in that war sequence, and it is very moving. I'm just worried, maybe I'm being too pernickety structurally. I don't see what it's for. I was just interested. If there had been no novel, I wouldn't be thinking this. It's just that I was interested that the novel didn't make me think that.
I will confess, if it's something to confess too, I haven't read the novel.
I knew you were
so I come to this with none of that baggage whatsoever, and it carried me along for all kinds of reasons. Right. First of all, in the sequence we've just seen a little bit from, in the country pile, I've never seen a film which acknowledges that on occasion the British summer can be feverish and swampy and lead to bad things happening, and it evokes that tremendously.
And it was the hottest summer in 1935.
Is that right?
Yes,
so it's historically accurate also. But then the other great thing it does is that each shot in the country house is like a painting, and it suggested to me it was like they were like Edward Hopper paintings transplanted to the English shires. So what they are is lost, dysfunctional, isolated, emotionally constipated figures who don't know what to do with themselves, and it's marvellous.
Yeah, it is like a painting, but it's got extraordinary tension right from the beginning, where we see Bryony running, and even you'll see a character stirring their cup of tea, and it's a moment of tension.
Oh, when those characters are languid, there's something not quite right about their language.
Extraordinary way.
Yeah.
But I have a problem with the Bryonies, because I think the very young Bryony is excellent, obviously, and you care about her, you're engaged with her, even though she isn't very likeable in some ways. The middle Bryony, who's Romola Garoy, I think gives an exceptional performance, because she's got the hardest task of all. We don't know her. She has to convince us she is Bryony, and she's not there for that long. I think she's also wonderful. But the problem is, and particularly when we come to the end with Vanessa Redgrave,
she comes out of nowhere.
I don't know who that person is. I spent a whole film apparently watching from Bryony's viewpoint, apparently caring. I don't know who this woman is, and it wasn't a problem in the book.
We'll have to stop there, and we'll have to leave the discussion about Keira Knightley's abilities or otherwise for another day. Atonement is at cinemas nationwide, certificate 15. Well, Atonement